So a lot of you have had some trouble with your wrists, especially in down dog and in plank and all of that. So I'm going to give you some tips to hopefully help alleviate some of that. Now, a quick note is that honestly, totally honest with you, it's probably just because the muscles around the wrist are weak. It took me a very long time to be able to stay in down dog or in plank, especially side plank, for an extended period of time or any period of time without feeling discomfort in my wrists. And most of the time it really is just getting used to staying there and strengthening the supporting muscles around that area. So a few things. I have a block. If you have one, great. If not, you may or may not need it anyway, so I'll give you some options with that. But let's use side plank just as an as a first example. So in your side plank, the wrist should be under the shoulder. So most of the time, like the opposite arm will lift, in which case you have a lot more weight coming down on that one hand. So one of the problems that you could experience is that if your wrist is not exactly stacked over the shoulder, and let's say it's here, or the opposite, it's moved back here, you don't have the equal pressure loading into the shoulder and into the elbow. So instead, when you're hyperextended, you're dumping all of that weight into the wrist, and it's kind of breaking in the sense that it's not at a 90-degree angle. And that's going to put a lot of pressure. That hurt my wrist doing it just now. So that's going to put a lot of unnecessary pressure on the wrist, and it'll definitely be uncomfortable. Same with moving too far back. You're kind of jamming the joint, and that's not going to be comfortable either. Same goes for a regular plank. So when you're in your regular plank, excuse me, from here, if the wrists are hyperextended and the shoulders are pulled really far forward, that's going to be uncomfortable. It hurts me doing this too. When you're lined up at 90 degrees, then you have a lot less pressure. Also, the hands should be spread very wide, so make sure that when the hands are down, you're not leaning on the outer edge or leaning too far on the inner edge. You want to keep the hands totally flat. And that's something that we don't really think about because a lot of people can't totally flatten their hands, and if you can't totally flatten the hands for the most part, then you're going to have uneven pressure on either side anyway, and that goes back to time. It just takes a little bit of time to stretch out the muscles in the hands and strengthen the muscles in the wrist to help get them there. So a couple pointers with the planks. Then we'll go to down dog. So in your down dog, it's really important, I see this a lot, that when you're in your down dog, leaning forward and kind of arcing the upper back, this is a really common way that people do down dog, and it's not correct. So instead of leaning this far into the hands and dumping all of your weight into the upper body, think of lifting the butt up toward the ceiling. So you're really actively lifting, even if you're coming up off the heels, that's fine. So you're kind of taking a lot of the weight out of the wrist. So you're pushing away from the hands, lifting the butt up, and then with time, you can weigh the heels down a little bit more, but you're pressing away from the front of the body and relaxing the head. So if all of this, even with those modifications, if it still bothers the wrists, that's okay. Could be strength issues, could be little imbalances like that. And you can modify most of these by coming down to the elbows. So side plank, elbow under the shoulder. You can even drop one knee while you're strengthening. So side plank, like this. Center plank, elbows under the shoulders. Hands can be together or down. Regular plank. And then instead of down dog, you can come to dolphin, which is on the forearms, and that looks like this. So notice my elbows are under the shoulders, the knees can be bent slightly, the belly pulls in, and the hips are still lifting up toward the ceiling. Neck is relaxed, and eventually you can straighten the legs. So those are some of the modifications that come to mind right away. Another one is, I see a lot of people like to use like their fists. A lot of men do that. I don't know why. I don't know. I think it's like I see it in gyms a lot too. But if it's comfortable, I mean, using your fists is fine as well. It makes it a little bit tougher to flow if you're doing yoga, but I mean, that's totally cool. You're at home, so you can do whatever you want, right? And then one final note, if it just feels like the floor is too hard or you don't have enough support and your mat is relatively thin, folding it up a couple times will probably help a lot too. So take your time to adjust if you need to. Here already, like I notice I don't feel it in my hands as much. So that's another option too. So that is plenty of ways to modify. Hopefully that makes your wrist feel a little bit better. I hope that helps. Let me know in the comments below if it did anything for you. Thanks for watching.